Hey, deserving listeners, the Ultimatum, marry or move on. Let's check it out.
I didn't know how I feel about this day, but I don't want to go through any ups or any downs with anybody else, because every night I just want to wake up next to you. Yes. Yes, I will marry you.
Yeah. Okay, a little surprising given the edit anyway. It kind of looked like she wasn't really into it, that she was hurt that he caught feelings for someone, which is understandable. They were arguing about she wants to move to the city and he doesn't. And, that's a big decision. The way that both of them seem to be approaching it is that they just get to have their way. She was seemingly having the position of just like, well, that's what I want. And so if you can't make that happen, then we're done. And, maybe it's a deal breaker. But she didn't really make a case as to why it was that important. But I don't know, we don't hear everything from her. For him, he was also, not being flexible, not talking about it, not trying to compromise or anything. But he did bring up some reasons as to why he didn't want to move to the city, because he wants to be near his family or something. But, who knows? It just seemed kind of like an odd... certainly there are people who will fight about things like that, but it seemed like if they did love each other, it would be a tragedy if they broke up just over that. Like I said, for some people that could be a really big deal, but most people I think would say, well, I love you more than I need to move to the city, but maybe there's some kind of compromise around this that we can have, or I can figure out a way to make it work. And, I don't know. Think about like Mike and Natalie. Natalie thought she was moving to Seattle and she moved to Sequim. But anyway, so two of them looks like they're going to get married. All right. What would I predict? I'm not a fortune teller. There's no such thing. But what would I put my money down on? And the reunions are usually only a year out or something, right? So it's not like that's difficult to manage. The real test is 5-10 years, that sort of thing. And, there's no shame in getting divorced. If you have kids, it makes it complicated. But anyway, so what would I predict about the two of them? Yeah, I could see them working pretty well. Neither one of them seemed to have notable defenses that would interfere, and traumas. I think particularly him, at least the way he comes across. And, and she's pretty reasonable too. So... if they did break up, though, I think it would be because I think their style is to kind of default to a distance and an avoidance. He might be a little better at getting to know his feelings and expressing it. I think she's more reactive. She even talked about how she's at the beginning of that discovery process. So I think she could improve things by getting to know her needs and being able to communicate them in a similar way that I think he is. So, yeah, I could see it working. But, I could see it working.
A symbol of my new commitment to you and the rest of our life. Will you marry me?
Yes.
Okay, so we have 2 yeses. And, yeah, I could see them working. They showed another fight that they had after they had that open crying moment. And it looked like he got triggered by something and he went on the attack. And she stood up for herself. And then I think he realized that he might be losing her. And he just tried to get out of the conversation, which was a good move, but it was a little quick in terms of how soon another triggering event occurred, and maybe they had a conversation about it, but I was saying that just because he had that realization or that open expression, that's just the beginning of the journey, and now that you know the problem, and the problem will continue, it's sort of like with climate change, once our government finally decides to acknowledge science after decades of scientists talking about it, okay, you know the problem. That doesn't fix it. It gives you the ability to focus on a solution, but you don't necessarily know what the solution is. You don't know how long the solution will take. You don't know about other factors that get in the way. So, yeah, and I worry that, well, what am I worried about? Well, regardless, even if he does intensive therapy for the next 10 years, I'm worried about the two of them, particularly her, because she is going to be victimized by it. And we understand that it's not his fault that he was traumatized this way and that he has these triggers. He's responsible for his behavior, but given the extent of the difficulties he's been through, it's really a wonder that he survived at all. We met his mom, and I don't know if people are going to say this, but possibly people watching might think that the mom was slurring her words and that she might have been intoxicated. There's no way to know. She could have. There's many reasons why someone might present that way, or I'm just weird and saw an odd speech pattern that no one else saw. It is a different accent where these two are from than I have. So maybe it's part of that. Anyway, so I just thought I'd mention that. But the mom was an interesting person, talked kind of like a truck driver, not to be stereotypical, but she had a very plain, blunt way of talking. And there was some abrasiveness to the way she was talking because James was talking about how he is, one of the major things that was driving a wedge between James and Ryan is that James wants to move to work in to work at SpaceX or NASA or something. And she didn't want to move or something like that. And now, though, he's turned a new leaf and he's saying that isn't the focus. It's more important to him that he be with Ryan than he pursue this dream of his. That there's priorities, and okay, the mom didn't seem to like that. She thought that James might be lying to himself or sacrificing too much or something like that. And anyway, it felt like the mom was inserting her own agenda and not really listening or something. I don't know. Maybe she's actually a really good advocate for him. But it had I don't know if I was biased given how much I know he's been through. And I don't know the circumstances. Maybe the mom needed to work 90 hours a week as a truck driver and there was no other way around it. I don't know. But given what I believe he went through, James, what he went through, I guess I have to admit that I'm biased against the mom. I'm angry at the mom. I don't know if that's justified, but I imagine James isn't even that much older than he was when he was a child. I think he's 24 or something. So he's pretty much a child in relation to my age, but it wasn't that long ago that he was a child, and so it's not hard for me to imagine. And the way he talks, the neglect and pain that he went through, and my heart breaks for him, and I just want to tell the mom I want to get a time machine or help the mom somehow so she could be there for her son and protect him from the traumas that he was going through, So I think maybe I was just looking at things negatively. But I could also see people, viewers like yourself, having a similar reaction to her of you're really primed to be like, you're the one that screwed him up, and to yell at her when she comes on the screen. How did you feel about that scene?
Will you marry me?
Oh my God.
I still believe.
Oh my God.
I love you.
I love you. Yes, I will.
I was going to say, is she going to be that passive that she literally just doesn't even answer that question? Or are they both going to be that assuming that she would say yes, that she doesn't even need to say yes? But okay. So, yeah, I mean, given how things developed over the show, it's, there was this one scene where I was like, wow, Alex, amazing. I think Alex, it's like he disappoints and amazes. But they were talking with his parents, and the parents were saying, well, talking to the two of them, and the parents seemingly were maybe a little biased against Kat, and maybe had been for a while. I don't know, or they're just being devil's advocates. But they're saying, you, my son Alex, always talked about how you need someone to challenge you, and you would previous girlfriends, you would always have girlfriends that you would debate things with, and were strong in that way. And do you feel like Kat can be that way? And they even asked Kat about that, and Kat said something like, well, I think I'm learning how to be that way, she says. And then I'm getting chills thinking about what Alex said. I can't remember exactly the words, but they were talking about strength versus weakness. And Alex says, well, I think she's actually stronger, or she has a different kind of strength, because she doesn't need to debate those things, or she is patient. She can debate things slowly. She doesn't need to attack and win. Something, I can't remember what. It was something along those lines. We saw this with Married at First Sight years ago. There was that one guy who was just like, I need someone who's my intellectual equal. If you watched that show with me, and the guy did not seem like he was smart. Maybe he was, but he didn't seem like it. And it just seemed like a really insecure, narcissistic, arrogant thing to say. And, there's some vibes about that with him. It's just like, I want someone who's my... Now, if you want someone who will engage in really lively conversations, that's a value, and that can be a deal breaker if they don't have it. But it also just seemed like some kind of fantasy that... I don't know, but I've heard this before. Younger people will have this fantasy of this perfect relationship that involves... I think Roxanne, similar to Alex, has a different version of that. I think for Roxanne, she has this vision of a perfect fantasy relationship where they're a power couple, and they're both, rich and famous and beautiful and interesting and entrepreneurs and groundbreakers. And it's like, okay, but that's not probably the road to happiness. It could be a version of happiness, but if that's the only thing you're aspiring to, it's not guaranteed to be, especially if that's what you prioritize over everything else. The chance of that making you happy, or anyone happy, is pretty low, right? So Alex seemed to have, I don't know, it's hard. They don't really, the show moves pretty quickly, so it's hard to know what people mean by what they say. But anyway, I just thought it was amazing that Alex is, the way he sees it now. You can imagine that, especially after going through with Roxanne, and because Roxanne is a very debating sort of person. Someone who isn't afraid to go after someone, which I guess is putting it in a nice way. And I think he might, in contrast, think, well, that she has that quality, but that's not a guarantee that things are going to work. I miss being with Kat, who, sure, Kat, when she needs to, she's going to push back, but she's not in a constant state. And sometimes that can really work together. You might look at the two of them and say, well, poor Kat, because she's so unassertive and a people pleaser, and he's this, I don't know. It's weird. I can't put my finger on him. I can't tell if he's a very mean, arrogant, self-centered person, or if he is just kind of blunt and oblivious, but ultimately a good soul. There's evidence of both. There's evidence he's a good soul because he wants to tell Antonio, and went through all that bullcrap with Antonio and Roxanne because, what he said was because he didn't want Antonio to get hurt, essentially. He wanted him to know. Or did he do it for some other reason? You can also do something nice and also be rotten at your core. So I can't really tell, but I think viewers might be worried about the two of them because he is the way that he is, and she isn't guaranteed to push back or even know that she deserves to push back, right? So yeah, that is a concern, which we just can't really know. But there's also a possibility that they fit well together. There's a lot of things involved in a romantic partnership, companionship. One of them is the element that we've been talking so far. There's a lot of other components that they might have that are more equal and work well together. Also, I mean, like me and my wife, I'm a talker and she's less of a talker, and she's more accommodating and she's more patient in that way than I am. And so from the outside, you might look at it and say like, well, Kirk is this dominant conversationalist or something, or blabbermouth. That's probably a better term. And Stacy is this quiet, patient people pleaser in that way. And that's unfair and it's wrong or toxic or imbalanced or something. And okay, maybe, but if both of us are happy, then and it's not extreme. I'm sort of exaggerating it. She certainly talks and can talk a lot, so it's not like that. But I'm much more opinionated, I guess, and intense about opinions. And maybe she is too, but she doesn't. She's more of an introvert. Maybe that's the way to put it. It's like I'm more extroverted. I voice things that are in my head, and she doesn't. She's more internal and thinks about them, and then maybe says something later. You know what I mean? So that can work. That can dovetail nicely together and complement each other. There are pitfalls to that, but it also can enhance each other, because for some introverts, they, as long as their extroverted partner doesn't pressure them or something, for some introverts, they actually want extroverts because there's at least some contact, because the extrovert will sort of fill the space, and for some extroverts, they want introverts because they want the space to process out loud without something interrupting them. And as long as the introvert is a good enough listener, or at least appears to be so, that can be a good thing. Now, both of us, need other relationships in our lives to have other kinds of interactions. I have my extroverted people that I will, be intense with together. So it's not like my relationship with my wife is the only relationship I have and meets all my social needs, that kind of thing. But so anyway, I could see them working. But if I were to take a guess about them, I don't know. I can't imagine her being displeased in the near future. I could see her growing and becoming displeased in 10 or 20 years with him, but I can't see her being displeased in the near future. For him, the way he comes across is the sort of guy who will stick with his commitment for a while. That he doesn't seem like a chaotic fellow. I don't know, maybe he is, but like with Roxanne, you could see her changing her mind. Like if she says yes, you could see her in a month or an hour or a year, having ups and downs, to be like, I don't want to be in this. Right? You can imagine. I can't. With Alex, he comes across like someone who, if he does commit, that he'll stick to it. But I don't know. But if something does go wrong between the two of them, you could see Alex becoming increasingly unhappy with the way, maybe Alex sees the way other couples interact and he feels jealous or envious of that. And he's like, oh, how come my wife isn't like that? Though, they debate things and I want things to be different. And then just, dissatisfaction builds and then eventually he leaves. I could see that happening maybe. But I imagine if they do get married, that they'll still be together at the reunion.
Yes. You gotta say yes.
What? That's... huh? What? Why? Surely by the time the reunion comes around, they're not married and they've broken up 3 more times. I did have an hypothesis that I think is near the top of my list of hypotheses, that deep down, she actually is very attached to him, which is why she's been with him for 4 years, but she's so insecure and traumatized by something that she splits off that part of herself and only identifies with this other part that she shows and communicates, at least to the cameras. You know, she could be like a Vanessa where, because you wonder about him, like, why are you proposing to her? But there are times when she might actually be able to identify with that side of herself that actually does really depend on him and is more the real her or something. But even the way that she said quote unquote yes is she just nods like, you know, like you're about to do some sort of medical procedure that you don't want, but you feel like maybe you need. And the doctor's like, so can I proceed? And you're like, yeah. I mean, the pain. And then the way that she's crying, it seemed very certain that she was crying because she felt bad for him and her or something. So maybe those tears and those faces were that she was grieving her own once by saying that she was going to say yes in her mind. And then everything that she was saying, even when they were giving their little speeches to each other, she was saying phrases like, I hope you find someone, I mean, not here, but kind of implying like, I want you to be happy. The kind of phrases you say when you're about to break up with someone. So I don't understand either one of them. I mean, what he's doing right now is easily predicted prior to this because he's been pretty one directional in terms of, regardless of anything, I want to be with Roxanne, regardless of what she says. I didn't, show the scene where they went to her parents and she was talking about the dad, quite a dynamic fellow, has these real direct questions and asked Antonio, what are you going to do for Roxanne? What are you going to change or something? How are you going to make her feel loved? And, Antonio obviously had a lot of things to say. Then the dad posed a question to Roxanne and she seemed dumbstruck. Huh? What am I going to do for Antonio? Him? Well, and then her first thing that she came to was, she's like, well, sometimes when he says, I love you, I don't say it back. Or maybe she said all the time. And the dad, God bless him, immediately is just like, geez, that sounds frustrating. That sounds annoying. And yeah, like the way that these two people are together, there's sort of a lulling into normalcy. And hearing the dad's reaction, like, what? Antonio says he loves you and you don't say it back? That sounds awful. Why? Now, as I said before, if she literally doesn't love him, then no, yeah, of course she doesn't. You say it, but she doesn't say that. She says all these, we've already been over that. But then that's all she said was, okay, what am I going to do for him? Well, he says I love you, and I don't say it back. Maybe implying that she should say it back more. Something's wrong there, right? That, what I'm going to do? Imagine if I said that. You know what I'm going to change for my wife? She's such a great person. I'm going to maybe consider saying I love you back to her when she says that she loves me. That's what I'm going to give. That's not a gift. That's starting at the basics that are given, It's like saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop pushing my partner down the stairs. That's my gift to you. Again, if she doesn't love him, then absolutely, then talk about that. But she doesn't. That's not what she says. She said, well, when you asked me out of the blue, and I was like, huh? You said, I didn't know what to say. Like, it's not convincing. And you just feel bad for him. The weird thing about this series that I'm making is that I'm like total inundating myself in this show for like 5 days, wearing the same shirt every time. so I can edit it together. But I haven't posted any of these episodes yet, so I have no idea what people think about these people. So I just, so it's like, do people feel bad for Antonio or do they hate him? Do people really, I can't imagine people really identifying with Roxanne. I could see some people, but, there's something really, but of course, this is their so my hypothesis was that she splits off the part of her that is desperately attached to him and needy of him, like the way a child might be. And the other thing she was saying, there's all these platitudes that they say, and God bless them. I mean, they're about to commit to being married, but there's all these like phrases that you just hear that everyone says on the show. It's like there's certain things that they always say, and it's not very compelling TV to me. It's just suspense until this moment. But hers were interesting because the whole time, like half of the things she was saying was, I know how much he loves me. This relationship is really notable for how much he loves me and how dedicated he is to me. And yeah, in the scheme of things, that would be something to highlight and something to appreciate. But she doesn't follow it up with, and I love him so much, or and I'm dedicated to him so much. It's just about what he's giving to her, right? But anyway, so my hypothesis is that she actually does desperately need him, and he actually sees that side of her, and that's what he is proposing to. But she is, or I guess I've already been over that whole hypothesis. I forgot that I finished that thought. Anyway, what do you think about this? I'm going to take a guess, and I'd put my money down on a lot of y'all being like, ugh, maybe even more negative than my reaction. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. All right, well, let's adjourn there and tune in next time when I continue watching. And everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really, really do.